Hi. And I like to say hi because it means that you're feeling good. And because you are good. At your true self, we're all good. There is no good or bad at the level of who we are. We're absolute goodness. It's our nature. And yet, the wonderful thing about being in Mother Nature at the lake and the mountains and the trees and wherever it is that you feel that you are harmonizing with the earth, because your body is made of the earth elements. And we're breathing the atmosphere, the oxygen. And in that sense, you're not believing. My topic is drop beliefs. Why I say drop beliefs, it's so big. Everybody says, well, I believe this, and I believe that, and I believe. And what are people fighting wars over? Over what they believe, what they've been taught. What are people fighting in families or couples? It's, well, I believe this, and you believe that, and I believe this. But what do you know? Knowing is beyond belief. That's why the integrity of nature, these rocks know they're rocks. Everything has consciousness. And they know they're rocks. And this tree stump knows every little part is part of a tree stump, and it's being who it is. It isn't trying to be a frog. Isn't trying to be somebody else, isn't trying to copy somebody else. What really unique, great souls can remind us of is not to copy them, but to be who we really are. And when we're being who we really are, not what our mind says, not a caricature. Like people say, well, I got to be who I am, and I'm really angry, and I got to be who I am, and this is it. That's not you. That's not you. I think it was Gurdjieff who was saying that I got my first lessons in witnessing. That teacher of observing. And he gave I use the example of, say you're in a car and you're driving the car, that's you and your body, and you're right there driving your body. But above it, if you witness the driving of the car, then you recognize it's like you're not the physical body, but you're there in your spiritual body, you see, your spirit soul body, witnessing. And in witnessing, you can have realizations of what you know. And if you think about all the so-called mistakes that you've made, because we've all made so-called mistakes, but maybe they're not, if we find the good in them and we use the gifts there and make our corrections, it was beneficial. But not that we have to make mistakes to get lessons. You don't, because you got to be careful about what you believe. Because we can be believing things that something happens and all of a sudden we make a belief about it. And then that belief is a program that is running in the mind, which is just a concept or a belief that we made up about something. And then for us, then that's going to be true because that's in our perception, and what we are projecting and believing is not what we know. And there's a real big difference. That when people say, do you believe in God? No, I don't believe in God. But I know there is a divine presence that I am part of that is always there for me and for everybody. It's absolute goodness. And I know that by what I've experienced. And I don't have to prove it to anybody. You know, that's people say, well, you have to prove what you know. Why? If you know it, you know it. You don't have to prove it, and you don't have to defend it. But what do people defend? Their beliefs. Well, I believe this, and my God is like this, and then my God, and you don't have the right God. Now, who would be creating that struggle and drama in your mind? And you have to see who would get the benefit out of that. And we see that often in organized anything that gets too organized, becomes institutionalized, is that they're promoting that for the money, for the power, for the control. Because see, when you know and you're tuned into your knowing and your inner guidance, wherever you are, you're protected and maintained. And your source is your source and supply of whatever you need. And you always have what you need. And you're always then in the right place at the right time and in the right way. And how would you ever know to trust your knowing? Is by trusting your knowing. There was one time when some people wanted me to do some work, some of my teaching. And it looked like a good deal. And yet, in my stomach, I felt nauseous because it wasn't for me. And we're trying to put ourselves into situations and places because we believe that's what we should be doing. Or other people tell us what we should be doing. So instead of trusting ourselves, we believe them. But then who's stuck with the results? You are. And if we get beyond beliefs, we won't be arguing about anything. And to me, I think it's always fascinating when I'm with other people who are spiritually conscious that we actually come to the same conclusions. Because when we're knowing at our deepest level of who we are, we're connected with all beings. All spiritual beings everywhere, wherever that may be. And we're right there, right now. And that who you are is more important than what you believe. That's why would you give your life to a cause, to prove something? What? My God's better than your God? My color skin's better than your color skin? Really? Who would be promoting these kind of things? Keep us fighting with each other when we love each other. And we love the differences. When we're coming from the same heart, the same place, centered in our own beingness, our own knowingness, just like the integrity of this rock knows it's a rock. Well, you need to know you're a God. Not the big deal, but you're God-like. That doesn't mean you're sitting on a lounge chairs drinking Mai Tai and being waited on by slaves. Really? That's fake. That's real fake. It means that wherever you are, you have no fear. You're in awe and wonder. And then the world is transformed into the spiritual, the divine, the harmonious. So one of my friends is a playwright, and he really does a good job of his research and his writing. And I asked him to read one of my manuscripts that I've published a few issues, but to do more, it's all on discernment, the power of choice. And I use animal stories to tell, caricatures of how we fall into caricatures. And we get into trouble by lacking discernment, by not trusting our inner guide, by getting caught up in beliefs. And he said, you've got to have a protagonist because that's the way it is in literature and in drama. But the only protagonist is our own mind. And that comes from everywhere around promoting and putting in beliefs, families, religions, governments, education, science, medicine, all of these places. And what we need to know is that we want to bring all those back together because they were together at one time. And they're in the state of knowing and being. So believing, the more you believe, the less you know. And just start noticing the beliefs and how, it takes 3 to start an argument. It's you and the other person, plus could be 3 or more, talking to you in your mind. Who's right and who's wrong? Who's better? Who's worse? Who's good? Who's bad? Who do I like? Who do I hate? And discernment's important. And when you trust your inner knowing, you know, in a sense, who to be around and who not to be. But you love who they are at the essence of their true self. But you don't have to be around where they are in their consciousness and their activities. Doesn't feel right. You got a lot of people, young people, they may be in families where the people are so troubled and so fighting. The key then, hey, focus on how you're going to make your escape. That means focus on where you want to be and what you want to do and the kind of people you want to be around, and develop yourself in any situation. In fact, when I was in England one time and I was at Glastonbury, which I really, really liked that place, and I took a group because I did a lot of tours around to the different holy sites around the earth, over the earth. And there was our guide who was in the at Glastonbury, who knew the history and all this. He was just a really cool guy. Well, he had been in a Turkish prison for having some, I don't know, I guess it was part of a marijuana cigarette or some kind of thing. That's all, nothing really big deal. But he was in there with the man that there was this movie about the midnight something where he escaped from this prison. And when our guide in Glastonbury said, when he got there, the other people there, the inmates, said, you can either fight this thing or you can go within and devote it to your spiritual life. Well, that's what he did. He meditated. And then it became like he was a monk in a what would you call it? In a religious institution. Interesting. It's how we perceive it and what we believe about it. And so using everything, in a sense, to empower you to go within, to be who you are. Because the more you believe, the less you know. And the more you know, the less you need to believe. Because you know. Witness. Observe. Let go of those beliefs and trust your inner knowing.